Alright. That's a little bit more level. So, you know, there's just quite a bit to go over here. You see, I've always noticed how, you've been told before, judgmental people are often the most insecure people. I mean, it's not that, even if nobody's ever told you before, if you've never heard this before, it's a very logical thing. So it's not like this is super in-depth or anything. I mean, it's pretty clear. If I'm insecure, I'm gonna immediately, because I'm noticing stuff in myself, I'm gonna be, I'm projecting what people are thinking about me. I'm gonna probably be I'm gonna notice those things a lot in other people, and I'm gonna try to call them out in some kind of preemptive strike type deal, like, so, I mean, you'll see it, whether it's, like, let's say somebody who, doesn't really like the way they look, or, they don't feel good about the shape that they're in. They're, like, always talking to people about how, they're overweight, or they're not very strong. And then, when they get into fights or arguments with people, and they're talking about it, they're always talking about how out of shape and overweight the person they're mad at is. And whether it's actually the case or not, it's 50-50 split, but either way, on the face of things, sure, that might be true, but that's a little bit hypocritical, and that really just, I don't think these people notice that in the moment, but it's very clear what's going on here, because, for them to think that other people aren't going to clearly see that they're feeling insecure, so this was not just some random choice of insult, they have to assume that we're all just blind, right? Like, our eyes are not functioning properly, because we can look at you and the person you're mad at, and we're going to immediately tell, that's not really a fair thing to try. And obviously, fair doesn't really matter when it comes to that, because it's an argument, but it's hypocritical, and it's very much not very good. Another thing I've noticed is the same person, and sometimes it doesn't include the judging. It's 50-50, depends on who you're dealing with, or maybe even who you are. They will always be making these little comments as, like, what I like to call sympathy bait, where it's like, like I said, we'll go back to the person who's not really happy with their image, or their fitness. They're like, they're always talking about how you're talking to them, and they're like, I'm so embarrassed because, I'm overweight, and you're like, yeah, that's okay, everybody's insecure about something, there's so many, you could work on this, you could work on that, but really, do you, you can get better at that, and that's on the face of things, that's fine. Being open with, what you're insecure about, with the right person, that's fine. But when we take it to what I like to call sympathy bait, that means you're always making these little comments to try to, like, where it's awkward, where it's like, we'll be having a conversation, you and I, and we'll be talking about, like, people we know, and then you suddenly just start going, oh, that guy, I'll never be in as good a shape as him, or that girl, I'll never be in as good a shape as him, because I'm so fat and ugly. And I'm, like, thinking to myself, what do you want me to say here? Because you very clearly know what you're doing, because in the sense where I'm not gonna blow crud up your ass and tell you that you couldn't improve on some things, because you could, but we've already talked about that, and I'm not gonna be a jerk about it, but, I'm not gonna be dishonest with you, but, now you're putting me in this position where it's like, but I mentioned that other person, so now you've got to say something, or else we're I'm gonna think you want me to feel bad about myself. Like that's reaffirming. Well, I didn't choose for you to say that. You very clearly have come across this on your own, and you're using it to try to get validation and sympathy from me. You want me to say, "Oh, that's not true," or "That's not true." Why don't we just that by doing that, that defeats the whole point of being open. So yeah, that's one thing I've kind of been, thinking about. What was the other thing? Sometimes it's nice to just sit in silence. July 29th, I mean. Doesn't really get much better than this in terms of atmosphere and weather. You know, the other thing is, when people I think I've covered that all I want for now. Now, I've touched on this a little bit in a little short thing I just put out, but we live in a culture where, and you've definitely, at least, well, almost certainly, almost, have subconsciously realized this over time. When it's Halloween, we're already getting ready for Christmas. Or when it's the 4th of July, Halloween stuff and even some Christmas stuff is going out. We, you know, summer doesn't end until late September, either like the 21st or the 22nd. And we're already being told, you've seen it on TV, that summer is over. Well, sure, summer vacation is, we've still got a month left of, you and your kids still have got a month left of that. But we want to talk about how, like, it's already over. And it depends on, what you're dealing with. We live in a culture that loves to live in the future. And that same culture also really loves to send a bunch of phony jerks to talk about living in the moment. You know what I mean? It's ironic. Or, if you look at the context, unironic. Because, these are all a bunch of phony jerks. I mean, just a bunch of jackasses if we really get down to it. But what about just the now? And that's another thing. What about the now? And to go, why don't we just, it's summer right now. It's July 29th. I mean, let's live in the now. Let's not be thinking about, oh, summer's over. When that's like, we're pushing this whole narrative of living in the future. You walk into a store now, you see Halloween stuff out already. And that's even further out. That's 3 months out. Maybe a little less. Why not just live in the now? Because if I spend this beautiful summer night thinking about Halloween and trying to live there and think ahead there, I'm gonna miss out on the depth of this experience right here. I mean, I think there was a study where they took like the average person who, starts their career at 22, and if you take away sleeping, working, and like you take somebody who only lives for the weekends and their time off, you have 11 years of life. And that's going to be cut into by stuff like yard work and other such things. I'm not sure there's a study at that. I wish I could cite the source, but this is just something that comes to me. But, so yeah, and then also, you hear all these people that talk of potential, right? They're always talking about your potential, the things you could do. Your parents talking to their kids, you could do this if you just study all the time. You could do this, you're going to be this, you could be like your granddad. You could be all these great things, but what about what you are now? Huh? Why are we always thinking about what we could be? Because there's no guarantee any of us live another moment, really. I mean, sure, it's unlikely that you're just going to spontaneously combust, but not unheard of. I mean, there's a chance. So this whole idea of that. Yeah, so what about the now? Because this whole idea of following all these little arbitrary rules set by people above you so you can become something in the future that's supposedly more is just going to eat away from the experience now. You are an ever-evolving person. Work on improving in the now, not thinking about the future, and improving in the now for the sake of the now. Because there's no guarantee of anything. And I speak from personal experience. Spending all your time trying to live up to some arbitrary standards set by somebody in your family or somebody of, like, society, maybe, culture, whoever is above you, your boss, your workplace, whoever has power over you, living in the hopes of your potential, trying to live up to your potential, all following all these things for no real guarantee of anything. I mean, you could just, anytime you get in a car, there's a chance of a fatal crash. You could get, a plane could fall out of the sky and just obliterate you. There's so many ways it could happen. So, what about the now? Just live in the now, improve in the now, and do it for yourself. Because it's like Carl Jung talked about the shadow, and then the persona we wear in public, and when the persona slips, this image we want people to perceive us as, or we feel the need to be perceived as, slips. It happens in little bursts, because we're trying to avoid our shadow, which is all the things we put off to the side, our ugly side, not our ugly side, just ugly, plus any of the other things we just don't like to think about, push away, or think aren't good enough to be put out. And that's a killer, I tell you. So, live in the now.